Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in the last video tutorial, we did the basic syntax of the Dart programming language. Okay, so today we are going to talk about variables. So what are variables? Variables are simply memory space in our programs, okay, that we can use to store values. Okay, so it's like when we create a variable in our code, okay, we create a space, okay, a memory space where we can store a value there and then use it, okay. So how do we create a variable? So there are so many ways we create variables in that programming. Okay, what we can do is we can first use the var keyword to create a variable and then specify a name for that variable. Okay, let's say my variable name, and then we can also go ahead and then assign a value to it once we create that variable. So now we have the keyword var, which tells that this is what this is a variable. Okay, and then we have this value um, inside this variable. Okay, so my variable name becomes what the name that we have given to the memory space. I mean the variable. When I talk about memory space, is the same as variable. So we have given this name to that memory space, or okay, or to that variable. And names that we give to variables or memory spaces are known as identifiers. And you should know that identifiers for variables cannot even start with what a number. If you start with a number, then you're going to get an error. You can't start with some special characters like this, you're also going to get an error. But then a variable name can end with what? A number. And then that works fine. Okay. So we have our variable here. Now, what happens when you create a variable with the var keyword? What happens is that when you create a variable with the var keyword, the variable becomes what? um, some kind of dynamic. Dynamic in such a way is that you can store any value in that variable. Okay, any value of any data type in that variable. So I can do something like blankson here. Okay, so this is a string, and what I first stored was what a number. So there are two different data types. Okay, but because I'm using the var keyword here, I can change the data type of the value to any other data type if I want. I can use a list here and say Langston, and then I can put this here. Okay, we will talk about this type of data in more details in later videos. But for now, I want you to understand that when you create the variable with a var keyword, then you can give it any value of any data type. But what happens is when you want to change, we can also change the value that we store in a variable, okay, at any time, at any point in time. So suppose I come here and I use my variable here. Let me just copy instead of typing the whole thing here. I'll just copy this and then I'll paste it here. And then if I want to change the value, which is this value, which has been stored in this memory location or memory space, then I can go ahead and then change it to, let's say, Richmond here. And then I can use 90 here. So if I go ahead, you remember in the last video tutorial, we can use the print keyword to print something in the console. So I'm going to use the same print keyword to print, to display the values in the console. So to display the value or to access the value of a variable, you just call or use the variable name. So I use the variable name here, and then I put it in the print. Now when I run it, I should see the value in the console. So looks like my internet is slow, but it will come. Okay. So now you can see I'm having Richmond and then 90 here. The reason is the initial value was blank in 56, and I call the variable here, and then I reassign using the assignment operator. I reassigned a value to it. So it's like the old value is discarded, and we have a new value stored there. Okay. Now, the var keyword, when you use the var keyword, you can't change the data type. Okay, once that you've assigned a value of a specific data type to that variable, you can't change the value, the data type of the value that you want to store there. You see, I store the same data, I mean the same kind of data in that variable. Now what if I want to save just a number there? Let's see. If I save just a number there, I get an error here, down here, which say a value of type int can't be assigned to a value of type list, because the value that I first stored in the variable was what? Was a list, and this time I'm trying to store an integer in that variable. Okay, yeah. So when you use the var keyword, it becomes then it looks like it's dynamic, allows you to store any value of any data type to that variable, but later you can change that data type. Okay, so in that too, we can also specify the data type of a variable before even storing or having a value inside. So I can go ahead and specify int, okay, which is stands for an integer, and then say my number, and then I can put 67 there. So now this time I specify the data type here, okay, and I give the name of my variable, and then I assign 67 to it. When I give the data type and I try to assign a value of a different data type like this, then this is going to throw an error because I have implicitly specified the data type, which is integer, and I'm trying to store a value of string there. So I'll just convert it back, and then I'll create another variable with the string, and then say my name here, and then I'll put blanks in here, and then um, sorry, string, okay, it's supposed to be capital, and then I can run this. Oh, sorry. So you can see that the string my name here can contain um, the string value here. If I try to also change this to a number, this will also throw an error because we have specified the data type of that variable to be what? A string. Okay, so I'll change it back. Now we can also go ahead and also look at a list and say my list here, and then we can also specify something there, and then we can put let's say Blanson here, and then 90 here. So you can see that we can specify the data types, and also we can choose to use the var keyword, but once they is assign the value to it, we can't change the data type of that particular variable. Okay, we also have the dynamic keyword. Okay, let's say the dynamic keyword, okay, which tells that this variable is supposed to be dynamic. The data type is supposed to be dynamic. Okay, so that means we can change or assign different values of different data types to that particular variable at any point in time. So we can use the keyword dynamic and say my dynamic variable, okay, and then I can assign an integer first to it. Now, if I assign an integer to it, with this same variable, I can change the value, and then I can change it to what? Um, I can change it to a string. I can also change that same variable back to what? A list. So I can have this, and I can have Johnson, Richmond here, and I can have this here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to print that value in my dynamic variable here. Okay, before changing those values, I want to print them here so that we see. So that's what happens when you use the dynamic keyword. That means you can change the value, I mean the data type at any point in time. You can assign any value of any data type at a point in time. Okay, so I'm running the code and it should run. So we have three ways of creating variables in the Dart programming language. Okay, we can also create a variable. I think my internet is kind of slow, but let's wait for it. So we have We have another way that we create variables in that, okay, by using the final keyword and also by using the const keyword. So when we use the final and then the const keyword to create a variable, it means that the value cannot be changed. Okay, so this time we are not even talking about a data type. That means once we give a value to once we give a value to a variable using the final keyword, we can't change the value there. Okay, we can't change the value there. I don't know why this thing, my internet is kind of slow. Let me just run the whole thing again. I'm just refreshing and then run. Uh, okay, so we have the value printed here, and we have it here. Okay, so what you can see that we have initially it was 89, and then now we have blanks in, and then now we have this list assigned to it. Okay, so we can also create variables using the final keyword and also the const keyword. Okay, so when we use the final keyword, we don't have to specify the data type like this, or we don't even need to specify um, let's say use the var. Okay, so we can go ahead and say final my final variable here, and then we can assign 67 to it. Now when we do that, we can print my final variable here, and then I think the spellings are different anyway. Let me just copy and paste here. So when we do this and then we run the code, we should see 67 there. So what happens when we use the final keyword? Now, if I try to change my final variable, let me just paste the code. Let me just now if I try to change it to less than 90, an error will be thrown. Even though they are of the same data type, I can't change the value once it is assigned. I can't change the value because it's final. You can't change it. Okay, so that's how you create um, some variables. I mean, using the final keyword if you don't want to change the value. Okay, and we also have the const keyword for creating a variable. So my const variable, and then we can assign, let's say, 89 to it. Now the difference between the const and then the final is that the const is at compile time. Okay, where it is only determined to be final at when the code has finally compiled. So when we try to go ahead and say my const variable here and then assign, let's say, 100 to it, we can see let me see, I think I have an error in the variable. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you can see we are even having an error here. Say const variables cannot be assigned. Okay, so those are it works like the final. Okay, but the difference is that this one is the const is determined at a runtime. Okay, when the code is running. Okay, so I will leave the I'll end here and then we can continue in later videos on operators. Okay, so I'll end here and see you guys in the next video tutorial. Okay.